We're back, bitches.
We are back, motherfuckers.
Have you missed us? I think you have.
Nathan, who are we talking about today?
We are talking about Margaret of Anjou.
Yep. She was Queen of England, married to Henry VI, and she is sometimes referred to as the she-wolf of France.
And Katie, this drink that I hath made is...
Doth tell us.
It is rosé spritzer, a shot of vodka, a half a shot of elderberry liqueur, put in some Italian soda that was blood orange flavored, and mixed it all up. And so we have a blood orange spritzer, ladies and gentlemen. A bloody rose is what I was going for.
Rose. I love it. Let's get into the life of Maggie O.A. M.O.A.
M.O.A. Moa.
Moa.
Give me Moa. Give me Moa. So, Margaret was born March 23rd of 1430 in modern-day France. So our girl is a ram. She's an Aries, and to be honest, kind of see it.
So, Margaret's parents had 10 children together, and Margaret was the 5th child. Random little tangent I went down. So her dad was only 21 when Margaret was born, and she is his 5th child.
So he's been having babies since
he was like 15. So her upbringing is kind of wild. So I want to kind of set the scene in how she was raised.
Her dad was Rene of Anjou, and he's the son of Queen's podcast alumni, Yolande of Aragon.
Yes.
And if you've never listened to that episode, totally cool. This is all you need to know about Yolande. She was a force to be reckoned with, bitch.
For real.
Yeah. She went against the monarchy in France and actually funded a little-known warrior called Joan of Arc.
Maybe you've heard of her. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's a name that our listeners will be familiar with. Little known indie warrior, Joan of Arc.
So Yolande is this hard-ass lady who honestly wants to change the course of European history forever.
She is primarily raised by Yolande of Aragon, her paternal grandmother, which, oh my God, talk about in a time and place in history where women aren't always having a seat at the table. Talk about the head of the fucking table. Talk about who bought the table.
Margaret's dad, Rene, was the Duke of Anjou and King of Naples. And her mom, Isabella, was the Duchess of Lorraine in her own right. When Maggie's dad was taken hostage, Mama Isabella led an army to rescue him.
How fucking cool.
What punk rock energy. So
seriously, though.
Yeah, she served as a regent in Naples for over a year.
She just has all of these strong female role models. So she's like, okay, women can be brave. Women can lead the discussion. Women can serve in position of power. Women can sway politics. Yes, snap, snap, snap.
I'm snapping. Since her family did view the girls as people who could hold power one day, they got good educations. So she's got 2 very strong female role models in her life. Top-notch education. Girl is made for leadership.
Y'all, big clit energy, morning, noon, and night. Big clit energy. So we are going to fast forward to when she's 14. Which, yes, to us, we'd be like, that's still childhood. But in the 1400s, that is on the verge of adulthood. So now she is 14.
We got to talk about the 100 Years' War, which... The 100 Years' War, long
16 years,
story.
but whatever.
Long story short, yeah, it was 116 years, but who's counting? All of us. All of us are counting,
All of us.
actually.
All of us.
France and England fighting over and over and over because England thought that they should just rule part of France. And France was like, hey, you can fuck the fuck off.
You can fuck all the way off. Yeah, this war has been going on for 107 years. And both England and France are kind of over it. And the King of England is this really young guy named Henry VI. He's unmarried, so he calls up the King of France and he's like, hey, Charles VII, can we, like, end this? I'm done. I want peace. Why don't I marry one of your daughters? And we'll make an alliance and call it a truce.
Yeah, the King of France in general liked this idea, but he wasn't really dying to marry his daughters off to the enemy.
Yeah.
However, the King of France was married to Margaret's paternal aunt. So the king is like, my brother-in-law has some daughters. They might work.
Yeah.
However, my brother-in-law is broke as a joke from fighting in all these wars, so that dowry, you might not be getting it.
Ain't happening, Captain. The fact that Henry is foregoing the dowry shows how fucking desperate he is to end it. Like,
thirsty to end this war.
He was so thirsty to end this war. I mean, it'd been going on 107 years, and, like, they're losing steam. They're losing money. Yeah. He's like, what the fuck ever. So Henry is like, awesome. I'm going to send over some dudes to go meet up with your brother-in-law, scope out the situation, have a look at his daughter. And at age 14, I thought this was interesting. Margaret goes with her dad to meet the English envoys because they want to, like, make sure that she's queen material. And so they all write back to Henry being like, she is smart, she is quick-witted.
Okay.
I think we can assume that she was conventionally attractive. The report sent back to Henry said that she was quote unquote womanly already at age 14. I hate it here. I hated reading that as much as I hated saying it out loud. But I liked this, and this is just Yolande of Aragon shining through. He was told that her courage was, quote unquote, above the nature of her sex, which means that she is just like, that means even at 14, she's speaking her mind. She's speaking her truth. She is poised, but she is also not afraid to say what she feels like she needs to say. And they wrote that she had great, quote, great wit, great diligence, and carefulness.
Yes. Girl has a way with words, speaking her mind, and we love, love, love this. And I think guys weren't used to seeing something like this. A girl being an active participant in her own negotiations. Like, wait a second. A smart, educated woman.
We've talked about a lot of women on this show that, like, their parents, like, started negotiating their marriages when they were young. There aren't a whole lot of them that when they were as young as 14 were active participants in the negotiation. Do you know what I mean?
No, you're exactly right.
But no, so no facts, just vibes.
In case you missed it.
The vibe I'm getting is that her parents, they know how smart their daughter is. Oh, if we don't include her in on this anyway, she's gonna make herself known anyway, so we may as well bring her to I just think it's really cool that from a young age, her parents gave her the agency. And so that's my no facts, just vibes guess, is that they were like, well, she's a ram. She's gonna butt her head in if we leave her out, so let's bring her anyway, because she's only gonna be a credit to their family because she's so smart anyway.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Anyway, Henry's dudes sent back a glowing recommendation about Margaret. Back to Ingle. I'll stop doing that. And now it's time for Margaret of Anjou to start packing up and getting ready for her trip because she's about to be the Queen of England, y'all.
Oh, to England.
Going to the palace, gonna get my fucking crown.
Yeah. Oui, oui. France was not going to pay for her trip to London, which was going to be super fucking expensive on its own. Because, okay, they're not paying for her actual travel, which alone is expensive, but she's not traveling just like some monk, you know?
With an overhead carry-on. And
she is traveling, she is traveling in style. So her carriages, or Pimp My Carriage, her gowns are all new.
Pimp my gown.
Pimp My Gown. It's paying for her to travel with the bougiest ladies in waiting. Those bitches ain't cheap either. Her security, they're not just going to be some dudes off the street. They are going to be the bravest, biggest, strongest knights. Can you imagine how expensive this is? They're also, along the way, she's expected anytime she goes to a religious shrine to make a big donation to show her charity. So this is we're going to talk about this more, but this is not fucking cheap just to get her from Anjou to London.
Yeah. So her journey and her coronation, which obviously England paid for completely. In modern day terms, is about $9 million. It's not her fault, though.
Maggie didn't grow up in rags or whatever, but she's probably also never had this much pomp and circumstance paid to her. She's probably feeling a little bit like, like, with that big Aries energy. Yes.
I've come to town.
Yes, I have arrived. You are welcome. So Maggie starts her long journey to England to become Queen of England. So it starts with a marriage by proxy with a dude named William de la Pole, who is the Duke of Suffolk, standing in for Henry. So, like, highlight that name. We're going to circle back. But Nathan, what is marriage by proxy? What does that mean?
By proxy just means by way of another. To be able to have a marriage without having to actually have your partner there, essentially. But it's not a mock wedding, it's a real wedding.
It's legally binding, just the person you're marrying isn't actually
the person you're marrying. Yeah. So there's that whole thing.
The reason they do this is, like, so while she's traveling, she is the Queen of England, basically. And so when she enters England, she's not entering England as, like, a random princess, a random minor noble from France. She's entering as the queen, as the king's wife. While Margaret is traveling through, making her way to England, she stays in this city called Rouen. And at the time, the Duke of York is, like, the manager, the head bitch in charge of, and she stays there the longest of her entire trip because when she gets there, it's like a week before Easter, and because of all the Easter celebrations, there's no traveling.
So she hangs out there with the York family for a few weeks, and they host party and pageants and have all kinds of celebrations, all in the name of their new queen and the peace this marriage brought to England. Because part of their marriage agreement was a 2-year truce between England and France. And the hope is that in those 2 years, they can settle all their differences.
You know, just clean up 100 years in 2 years. Yeah, sure. But now it's time for her to actually head over to England. And y'all, this journey was a nightmare. And we've talked about this before. I feel like with Catherine of Aragon, her journey over, like, the English Channel was really bad too. And just, like, it stormed so bad that the ship lost both of its masts. So I had to Google, what is a mast? It is the piece of wood that holds a sail. And they didn't have motors on these boats back then. How do you even navigate without the mast then? Like,
with a couple prayers.
with some prayers, some
Thoughts
awesome
and
prayers.
prayers.
Scary fucking shit. This journey should have taken 2 days, and it took like 9.
Ugh.
I know.
Yeah, during this trip, that guy we mentioned earlier, William de la Pole, the Duke of Suffolk, was responsible for keeping Maggie safe. And his wife, Alice Chaucer, aka Duchess of Suffolk, was her first maid of honor in charge. And during this trip, Margaret was sick. And
So
not
sick.
like the good kind of sick, the bad kind of sick. Yeah,
Like
so
the barf
sick.
kind of sick.
And the Duke and Duchess of Suffolk, they did everything they could to take care of her. And it seems that as a result, she created this bond with them. And they were the first people from, like, English court that she was like, these are my friends. If I get drunk at a bar, they'll be like, hey, come home, sweetie. Don't make bad decisions.
They're not
Like
going to let
that.
you do anything dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the Duke of Suffolk was old enough to be your dad, so she probably viewed him like that. A father
Like as a
figure.
father. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So when their ship finally landed in England on April 9th, 1445, Margaret was too sick to even walk. Which just makes me think for that 9 days, she must have just been barfing 100% of the time. And she was just like too weak. And so Suffolk literally carried her off the ship. It was thunderstorming so bad that they had to literally just carry her into the first building available to them. One silver lining here, I will say, is that maybe if she hadn't been sick, she'd be like really anxious about meeting her husband. She didn't have time to fucking think about that when
She's too fucked up. She takes a couple days to recover.
Yeah.
She starts feeling good enough to make her way into London. It would take her over a month to get to London because at every single stop, it was parties on parties on parties on parties on parties on parties on.
every single stop, every single pageant people were doing,
Ugh.
every single play people were doing for her, reoccurring theme was peace. You are bringing peace to this nation. We have been sending for over 100 years, every single family in this entire country has lost a husband, a brother, a son to this war. So they are just like, you are the end of war.
Stop Southampton. After she arrived, she received this welcome from a squire.
Ooh.
And he knelt before her and said, I have a letter for you from the king.
Hey.
She's so excited to read this letter that she didn't even acknowledge the squire that knelt, which meant, like, due to court protocol, he had to stay kneeling until she
Until she, like-
acknowledged him, which sounds super uncomfortable if you are said squire.
So, who was this squire? Why are we talking about this guy? Well, it was actually the King of England, King Henry VI, disguised. I don't know what his plan of action was here. I think he was just thinking like courtly love. But once it actually came to fruition, he was like, "Oh shit! I did not think this."
That is 100. That is 100% what happened.
They didn't have
Like-
Instagram. She hasn't been able to go and look through his pics. So I think like after like 10 minutes on his knees, he was probably like Joe Bluth, like, I have made a huge mistake. Like,
So let's get to know Henry VI really quick, shall
Let's do
we?
it. Let's-
Henry VI had been king since he was 1 year old. And Katie, what do we say about babies and jobs?
babies don't need jobs. Call me crazy. King seems like a pretty high pressure job. It seems like something that you need a little bit of experience for. And when you're 1, you have no experience. None. It is above your pay grade when you are 1 year old.
It's so true. But Henry VI, his dad was Henry V, so that means something. Henry, for real, he was famous for being a warrior and the badass king.
What you need to know about Henry, And what Margaret was probably told, his dad was a fierce warrior, just like your mom is, just like your grandma is. So she's expecting a king that maybe inherited those traits. Womp womp.
He did not.
So, we've got, where are we? Okay.
His mom was the daughter of the French King Charles VI of France, aka Charles Le Mad.
Le Mad?
That was the Mad.
Did you just throw in just one French word? Charles Le Mad.
Le Guilty.
So anyway, because Henry was a baby when he became king, a regency council was put in place.
Yeah, there's like 18 guys sitting around at a table shooting the shit,
That's
trying to
way
figure
too
things
many
out
people.
for the country. Yeah, narrow this down, dwindle this pool. But when he was old enough to reign on his own, which was like 16.
Again,
if
too
you can
young.
drive a car, you can drive a country. Henry was happy to let his council just kind of keep doing their own thing. Hey, y'all good? We good?
I think that's really
We vibing?
interesting because we've talked about a lot of kings had to have regency councils until they're old enough, and they were just chomping at the bit to take over. Henry VI was just sort of like, it seems like y'all got this. I would like to just do anything else. Like, he was not actually interested in running the government at all. He's happy to let the Regency Council just like keep running shit well past his majority. And this is bad news because the council is starting to form rivalries within itself. Lots and lots of fighting.
By the time Margaret of Anjou arrives in England, Henry has been ruling in his majority for about 7 years. But like we said, he still relied heavily on his council for running everything. Let's just give you the TLDR. Let's just map out the powerful dudes in England that you need to know for this story.
So first, there is the king's uncle Humphrey, the Duke of Gloucester. So even though Henry hasn't named an heir, everyone just assumes until Henry has kids, the Duke of Gloucester is technically the king's heir as well.
The important thing to note is that the Duke of Gloucester actually wasn't into the idea of peace with France. He thought that we should keep on keeping on with that 100 Years' War. At the beginning of the marriage negotiations, he was against the match with Margaret. Mm-hmm. Like, it had nothing to do with Margaret herself, but still.
And so the next guy we're going to mention is Richard, Duke of York. And so she stayed with him in Rouen. He's like a second cousin once removed of Henry's. And him and his cousin, the Duke of Gloucester, are BFFs. So they both don't want peace with France.
All right, so we're talking the Duke of York and the Duke of Gloucester
Are on the shit list. So they're on the shit list.
Let's look at the not shit list.
Yes.
The people that are not against the marriage.
Yes.
So there's the Duke of Suffolk, which we may have already met him.
Yes, we've already met him.
He was in the marriage by proxy, right? Mm-hmm. It's the father figure that she got along with in court. Like, that's her whole person that she was brought along with. And his wife, Alice, is Margaret's chief lady in waiting. And he literally carried her when she was too weak to walk.
Not figuratively. Literally.
Literally. Like, was like, oh, I've had the shits for 4 days straight. He was like, I got you, baby girl. Like, knight in shining armor.
And then, so that guy's best friend at court is a guy named Edmund Beaufort. And he is the Duke of Somerset. This guy's got riz dripping off, like, his fingertips. Like, this guy is cute and
Sparkly
funny.
riz.
Yes.
Sparkle riz. Yes.
He's pro-peace with France. This is maybe not the best person for Margaret to make friends with because he already has a scandal tied to his name.
Oh?
So Henry VI's mother was a woman named Catherine of Valois. Him and Catherine of Valois probably had an affair.
It was a scandalo.
So even though he is a good guy because for her to have an alliance with because of his politics, it's also tricky because his personal life is a bit messy.
To say the least.
To say the least.
So since Henry VI was very much interested in keeping peace with France, at this point in time, Suffolk and Somerset are carrying a lot more favor at court, while York and Gloucester are getting a little bit butthurt.
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than that. We could do a whole episode on just this 1 year section of this time in English history. But let's not. And let's just get back to Margaret finally getting actually in person married to the King of England. According to all accounts, they vibed. We don't know if they had chemistry or anything, but from all accounts, they got along. I mean, in an arranged marriage, getting along, isn't that the best case scenario?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
So they had their official wedding a few days later, but it was a small, quiet ceremony, and now they started their journey to London. They had pageants, parades, parties, with it all coming to a head at her coronation in London.
Opulent. So over the top. And so she is just like head to toe, jewels. She rode into London on a barge, and people threw daisies at her because the word for daisies in French basically translated Margaret.
Oh.
Isn't that good?
Marguerite is in
the
French daisy.
Yes. So that's why people threw daisies at her, which I loved. And then, so she wore a white gown.
She made the statement.
She also wore a crown of jewels. All of the water in the fountains in London were replaced with wine. Invite me.
Can I go to there?
Can I? Yeah. Can I?
Can I?
And so then she gets out of the barge and she's put in a chariot. And the horses are also dressed in white with with crowns on, jewels
Even
from
the
head
horses.
to toe. Even the horses are the bougiest fucking horses.
So Marge is in charge on a barge, driving with some horses, dressed pretty like, and it is all gorgeous as hell. I just want Marge on a barge.
In charge. After she got off the barge, they did all of these pageants for her and stuff. And the thing about it being like, you are bringing peace. You are the person that is going to stop my son from having to go to fight and die in this dumb war, which is so much pressure for a 15-year-old. This book that I read that said one of the pageants was like a Noah's Ark thing. Because isn't the whole point at the end, I'm not a biblical scholar, but at the end,
Katy, the biblical scholar.
Not a biblical scholar. At the end, God puts up a rainbow to be like, we've made peace. Super sorry about killing everybody. Yeah. And so they did a pageant for her about Noah's Ark. And I think that's so interesting, but also, and so she was just like, I need to bring peace to this country. I need to stop the fighting between us. But such a lot of pressure on a 15-year-old.
But also the reference that you just made was Noah's Ark, which is 2x2. So they're expected to have babies.
Of course they are.
You're expected to procreate. So let's tuck that in the back.
Put that
pages.
in your back pocket, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Yeah.
The coronation celebration went on for 3 more days, and now it's time to get down with the queen and shit.
So, pretty much right away, everyone was noticing kind of like the difference in Henry and Margaret's personalities. Mm-hmm. She is large and in charge. Right away, they're like, oh, she is an opinionated bitch. And he is just happy to let her steer the ship, which I think probably suited her well But I have to wonder if she was like a little disappointed. I wonder what his sign is. She's an Aries. Let's see what his birthday is. Oh, this is surprising. He's a Sagittarius.
Sag. Well, Sages go big or go home, and he went home.
I bet he's got some cancer in his chart or something. Anyway. But no.
No thoughts, just vibes. No facts, just vibes. But the two did share a passion for education, and 3 years after their marriage, Henry gave her permission to fund the opening of a college, and it just so happens to be called the Queen's College.
Of course.
And it's part of Cambridge. Can you invite me there?
It's also noted that Henry and Margaret, like, they actually spent a lot of time together. A lot of times in these arranged marriages, kings would marry their wives, but then just leave them to do their own thing. And then they would only really spend time together at like official events. And then when it was time to go to bed. But it seems like they actually liked hanging out with each other, which is kind of refreshing, wouldn't you say? So it's nice that they liked hanging out. But were they hanging out naked? Nathan.
But are they bumping butts? Probably not.
We don't know. There are records that support that Henry hired consultants to come into the bedroom and show them what to do.
So, not just a consultant, a sex consultant.
A sex consultant.
Like, all right, you gotta put it in right there.
And so they hired sex consultants, which would have been so on the DL. That would have been so controversial that the king literally did not know what to do. But how do you even apply for that job?
We gotta
move on.
Switch gears. There's a little bit of a rift at court. And remember that guy, the Duke of Gloucester? Mm-hmm. That was basically the HBIC. He had been against the alliance and her becoming queen. So Marge was kind of rude to him publicly. And it seems that as a result, Henry was taking away some of Gloucester's power bit by bit. The Duke didn't care for that all this much, so these political parties started to form to court, and it seemed that they were centered around, do we like the Queen or are we against the Queen?
So another piece of politics that we need to talk about is that the French came to England with this new proposition, and they're like, hey, so there is this piece, there's this territory that is physically in France, but it's owned by England, and it's called Maine.
Not the state.
No lobsters. No. But the French are like, hey, we would like Maine back. We are going to do, right now in our contract, it's a 2-year truce times 10. We're going to do a 20 years truce.
Blow it up.
Go for it. Give us this land back, 20-year truce. And Henry really struggled with this. He had like people from all sides being like, yes, no, maybe. But Margaret was like, my entire job here is to bring peace. So sign this truce. Take the fucking deal.
And the story goes that when Henry hesitated, would throw a temper tantrum, or totally give Henry the silent treatment.
A huge, oversweeping summary of the situation is that Henry finally agreed to give France back the territory of Maine. But because he hemmed and hawed, he went back and forth, he ended up agreeing to it without the 20-year truce.
Bad move, brah.
England got no money. England got no truce. France got everything they wanted, and England was left with a $9 million bride that has done nothing for them. This is the beginning of the unpopularity of Margaret of Anjou, which is so unfair.
Yeah. It's not her fault.
But we've
It's
talked
so
about so
unfair.
many times on this show how you can't talk shit on the king, so you talk shit on the queen.
Yeah. No. Anne Boleyn.
Misogyny.
Misogyny is history.
Misogyny is history.
Misogyny is history. Join us on iTunes as we launch our newest...